Um, are you on television? Right now? I don't know.
These videos are not for children. If you are a children, then piss off.
Hey there, it's me, your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso, and I'm here to yet again talk about Friends. It's a show that whether you love or hate it, and honestly, it's probably one or the other for you, there's very little in between when it comes to this topic, but whether you love or hate it, you gotta admit, the show stood the test of time, even if some of its jokes haven't. I mean, Friends is iconic, so much so that still to this day you could find Friends memorabilia in your local mall. I mean, they were everywhere. Magazine covers, music videos, TV guides, commercials, bunch of other things that I'm not remembering right now because I'm an old man. You can imagine how big the show was back in the day, if you weren't already around to experience it. But I think with the passing of time, a lot of things get lost in translation. And it's easy to forget that Friends was so big in pop culture that it actually managed to cross over with several other big and admittedly smaller shows of that decade. The reason most of these are forgotten, or maybe just generally unknown, are probably because the shows didn't have the same impact or staying power that Friends did. Now that's not to discredit these shows, because very few do. I mean, Friends is up there for a lot of people. So with all that being said, let's get into it. The most obvious Friends crossover is probably Mad About You. Phoebe's sister Ursula was a regular character on the show, and on it she was showcased as a forgetful waitress of the Riff. What some may not know is that Ursula actually existed before her fictional sister was even so much as a thought. Lisa Kudrow was cast as the carefree Ursula on the show, and it was through her work there that she was recommended for the role of Phoebe. To explain why Lisa would be playing an active role in both programs, it was decided that the in-canon reason would be because the two were identical sisters. Okay, I gotta give it to him, that's not a bad way of explaining the shared actor, but what about all these people? We working on old PlayStation 2 video game rules? If they're not a main character or advancing the plot, they all just have the same face? I'm not even complaining about it, I'm just asking. I'm trying to stay informed. I think what's especially interesting is that while Mad About You showed the character to be ditzy and inept, Friends kind of made her more of a genuinely unlikable human being. While she was always a bit incompetent, Friends made her completely apathetic. Mad About You showed her as carefree. Friends showed her as careless. Despite the fact that Ursula was a series regular on Mad About You, and only an occasional reoccurring character on Friends, I think it's fair to say that she was much more developed on the latter. The character is depicted differently on the two shows. Not so much that the betrayal feels unnatural, but it feels like she got fleshed out more over time on the other. And that's probably because the Friends writers really wanted to turn the character into the nega Phoebe. On Mad About You, she was a character, and on Friends, she was the evil twin. Further bridging the continuities between Friends and Mad About You, stars of the other show, Helen Hunt and Leela Kenzel, show up playing their characters Jamie and Fran, where they're seen entering Central Perk and running into Lisa Kudrow's Phoebe, mistaking her for Ursula. On that same episode, earlier on, Chandler and Joey head over to the Riff where they run into Ursula, mistaking her for Phoebe. This whole two-parter worked as a crossover between the two shows. But I gotta point out here that a lot of the time it's also attributed as being a crossover with the show ER, which was a show about doctors, being doctors. The show starred George Clooney and Noah Weil as, you guessed it, doctors, and they were also brought over into this two-parter playing, once again, you guessed it, doctors. So a lot of people believe that this is an additional crossover. But due to the fact that ER takes place in Chicago and Friends takes place in New York, as well as the fact that the characters are named Dr. Ross and Dr. Carter on ER, but here they're referred to as Dr. Mitchell and Dr. Rosen, it's less of a full-blown collaboration and more of a reference, if anything. But back to what I was saying before. Events from Mad About You would occasionally affect things on Friends, like when Helen Hunt's Jamie caused a citywide blackout on Mad About You, and it bled over into Friends and a show called Mad Men of the People. Oh great, so I guess that's also in this continuity now too. And now that I think about it, Mad About You also crossed over with Seinfeld because Kramer showed up in an episode. Not only was he acting like Kramer, he was flat out referred to as Kramer. Now that also means that this is a world that I don't even want to be part of anymore. Friends also happened to collaborate with Caroline in the City on a couple occasions. Ah yes, Caroline in the City. That is a show that I recall existing, and that's it. That's all I recall. And can you guess what city Caroline was in? That's right, New York. Because there was a mandate out at that time that sitcoms could only take place there. Due to the fact that she lived in said city, it was easy to have her show up on Friends, even if for just a passing second. In the episode The One with the Baby on the Bus, which, in case you guys aren't, major Friends fans, that's the episode where the baby's on the bus. Caroline mistakes Chandler and Joey for a gay couple as they're trying to pick her up, because they're at the time watching Ross's son Ben. So you can imagine that probably didn't go according to plan.
Oh yeah, he's got that great baby smell. Get a whiff of his head.
I think my uterus just skipped a beat. My brother and his boyfriend have been trying to adopt for 3 years. What agency did you two go through?
Chandler would then return the favor by showing up on an episode of Caroline in the City, meeting and trying to pick up the character Annie. So as you can imagine, things don't go according to plan.
Most guys are into that kind of shoot 'em up, TNA, gratuitous nudity in film. But I find that kind of stuff degrading. Sorority House Massacre 2.
And now we take a turn into the obscure and forgotten. And no, I'm not talking about my YouTube channel, although those are words that many would probably use to describe it. See how this works? If I make the joke first, then it hurts less later. Now look, I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm some sort of Mad About You or Caroline in the City aficionado. I'm not. I don't know a lot about them, but I do at least know of them. But these next two entries, or if I could even call them that, have me baffled. I had no idea of their existence prior to making this video. And you know what? When I was younger, I sat in front of the TV and watched the channels that these shows were on religiously, and I have zero recollection of any of this. I feel like if I try to rewind my brain back to that time period and remember the time slots when these things came on, it goes straight to that VHS static. No memory has carried over into my adult life of these shows. But anyway, there was a show called The Single Guy. I've never heard of it, but it was a sitcom that took place in New York, because of course it did. Anyway, sometime during the show's short run, who would make an appearance? Why, it's none other than Ross Geller. Apparently Ross was hoping to expand his inner circle, probably scouting for friends to include in the background of party scenes. I mean, how else you can explain them being able to invite all these people to parties and other events at the house? These people don't spend any other social time outside of each other, yet they still always have an invite list. I don't understand it. Or, maybe he was just trying to find a fallback plan. The guy knew that Friends couldn't go on forever, and he probably already figured out at that point in time he wasn't going to be the one to get the spin-off. Anyway, on the show he bonds with its lead character, Jonathan, until they both become suspicious that the other one is gay and is trying to make a move on them. And then 90s hilarity ensues.
Great sweater. Ross, man.
You're sure Janine's bone isn't from a dinosaur?
But it is pretty old, 20, 25 years maybe.
So it's not from the Pleistocene era?
No, the disco era. It's supposed to be great. A buddy of mine auditioned.
Oh yeah? Did he get in?
Joey? He still hasn't heard, but since it opens tomorrow, he's not holding out too much hope.
So Ross, how about you? Any good scars?
Well, yes, but mine are emotional, so you can't actually see them.
Like I said, I haven't seen or heard about the show in the past, so I'm just gonna go ahead and guess that David Schwimmer showing up on set one time was probably the highlight of its run. And then there's Hope and Gloria, which, out of all the footage I found for this video, was the absolute hardest to find, and after having watched it, it was absolutely not worth the effort that was put in. Like The Single Guy, the show lasted all of 2 seasons and isn't spoken of today. Probably for good reason. I mean, it's not the worst show I've ever watched, but it's probably the most forgettable. And that's somehow worse. Though I will give this series credit, because it surprisingly doesn't take place in New York, but Pittsburgh. During this episode, the series leads Hope and Gloria take a trip to New York to see the sights. and they head into Central Perk when they decide they need a cup of coffee. While in there, they see and mistake Phoebe for an actress from All My Children. Weird premise, but okay, whatever works for you. Or, doesn't. It's such a weird setup for a comedic moment that has no payoff whatsoever.
Phoebe Buffet. Who's that? Oh, I must be in character. I was on Live at 5 with Sue Simmons. This cab I was in fell in the sinkhole. So, the media went nuts. So I was like the baby Jessica for a day.
It makes it seem even more pointless that they had a whole plot revolving around getting these characters to New York just so they could have that one-off cameo, because that's what it seems built up toward. She doesn't have a whole lot of screen time, but from everything that I could see, like, the promotion of this episode was all about Phoebe being on the show. A really unfortunate waste of time. If the goal was to get eyes on the product, I mean, it probably worked. You probably got some people to tune in to see Phoebe, but at what cost? You don't think they're coming back, do you? Unless you start marketing every one of your episodes with having a character from Friends in it, I don't think this is built to last. I don't think a whole lot of people who loved Friends were gonna tune in to Hope and Gloria. Sorry, just from what I've seen. Probably gonna go with the route of the single guy. Anyway, those were the official Friends crossovers throughout its 10-year run. I think that almost everybody would agree that for the most part at least, these shows were the real beneficiaries to the crossover. I mean, no offense here, but I just don't think that Friends had a whole lot to gain from Hope and Gloria and the single guy. Call me crazy. So guys, oh pals, oh friends of mine, let me know in the comment section if you've been enjoying the Friends content. And if you are, I may have another similar video coming out soon, talking about some of the other Friends reunions that have occurred over the years. Anyway, with all that being said, I was your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso, and I thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.
Oh, thanks for watching.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.